broadcasting. So, welcome to everybody to this Trust Board meeting. And for the benefit of anybody watching, let me just say what I always say on these occasions, that this is the final part of the governance process. Most of the governance work takes place in the committees. We'll be hearing about those committee work during the course of this morning, but it's not our role here to repeat that work. And with that said, we'll crack straight on into the agenda. We have one apology for absence from one of our non-executive directors who's on holiday at the moment. Otherwise, everybody is here, so we're welcome to everybody. Just remind you that we are being recorded, microphones are quite sensitive, and we welcome members of the public and anybody who's watching us as we live stream this. Do we have any new declarations of interest from anybody? No? Excellent, thank you very much. We have all seen the minutes of the previous meeting. We just need to approve those. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions for change? No, everybody content to approve those minutes? Thank you very much. We approve those. We then have the action log. There were just two matters in the action log. One was relating to the Stroke Association question about cancelled ambulances, and that's been dealt with, I believe. And also one was a follow-up from our patient story of the last meeting, which has also been done. Estelle?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to update colleagues, you'll recall that Emma Worrell spoke to us at the last Trust Board in relation to her experience as a call handler and the abuse that she was often on the receiving end of. My team has spoken to Emma at length, resulting this week in some extensive media coverage around the abuse that our call handlers get, involving both Emma and another colleague. So that's had good traction both in the mainstream media and on social media, and I hope demonstrates, both gives a message to the public about the, their behaviour in isolated cases, but more, increasingly frequently, but also the support that we offer to staff and the acknowledgement by us of the experience that they have. So that's just to close that loop, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Estelle. Moving on then to the next item, Chair's report. You've seen my report on there. It's been a busy couple of months, as always. A couple of things I'd just like to mention. We have now received confirmation from the Cabinet Secretary for the appointment of the replacement for the Chair of Financial Planning Committee. That's a lady called Jane Beasley, who will be joining us mid-August. She's already started to interact with us, which is really good. And obviously, we have space, sadly, to say goodbye to Jogger. So it's our opportunity to publicly thank you, Jogger, for the work that you've done during your term here. We've really appreciated it. And I know you've been very much involved with Welsh Ambulance during your time here. So we thank you very much publicly for the time that you spent with us. And we can record that we've got a replacement joining us in August for continuity. That's good. The other thing I'd just like publicly to say, you will have seen that I've been out and about quite a lot, but particularly I spent quite an extended amount of time with the palliative care team in Swansea last week. And I would just like to commend publicly the work that they do. It's absolutely extraordinary. And I know Andy and others have been working closely with that team, but they do an amazing amount of work to keep people in their homes rather than convey to hospital when they are at end of life. So I would say to some of my NED colleagues, it is something well worth spending some time down there with the team, because they are doing amazing work in the pilot, which is going on in Swansea. And of course, what we hope is that when the pilot finishes in November, it'll be a 6-month trial, but we'll be able to persuade other health boards to sort of embrace that initiative as well, because it seems to be doing some really valuable work there, definitely saving conveyance and keeping people at home, which is where they choose to be. So on that note, I think unless anybody's got any questions on anything I've been up to during the last couple of months, we'll move on. No questions? Good. Okay, so Jason, it's over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. So we've got the usual report before you, summarising both my activities and key issues across the trust since we last met. If I can pull out a couple of points first, then happy to take any questions. We go to page 4, paragraph 4 first. This is just setting out that the ops team under Lee's leadership are undertaking a series of activities around operational effectiveness. So this is to ensure that we are being as effective and efficient as we can with the resources we have, particularly looking at variation across a number of key operational input measures. And I'm sure there'll be more to follow in due course. If we can then go to the bottom of page 5, where we start at paragraph 12, capital estates. I just want to draw the board's attention, and particularly any colleagues from across the organisation listening to the live stream or watching the recording later, there are currently 6 operational estate capital projects underway live across the service, with a further 3 All Wales capital business case projects also under construction. So, Chris, I've said this before, but a small team in the estates team, but a lot of work and progress made in recent years with estate improvements. And clearly here, just by demonstrating in these paragraphs on 5, 6 and 7, a lot of work continues to be underway to improve the accommodation for our people across the service. So that's good to see. If I can then take us to page 13, paragraph 50. This is the work that's been ongoing with our midwife and one of our consultant paramedics around maternity care and improvements to maternity care, which is great to see. In paragraph 53, you'll note that in collaboration with the college and the consultant midwife, we're looking to organise a national pre-hospital maternity conference. To my knowledge, Andy, that will be the first of its kind, being led by us here in Wales. So that's great to see. And we know, of course, that the work that our midwife has already been undertaking has influenced practice internationally through work that she's been doing with the International Academy of Emergency Dispatch. Paragraph 54, I'll save you blushes, Andy, but paragraph 54 is also a good thing for us here. Andy Woolwich has now chaired the first, or the inaugural meeting of the Chief Paramedics Group. So this is a new group established under the auspices of ACE, the Association of Ambulance Chief Executives. This is where directors of paramedicine or their equivalent job titles in services across the UK are coming together to increasingly lead and shape the clinical agenda, led by us here with Andy chairing that again. Pleasing to see that is the case. And then if I can take us finally to page 18, paragraph 98, again with the International Academy of Emergency Dispatchers here, a colleague involved closely with the preparation of ECNS, CPSS, and other acronyms also available in relation to the 111 implementation. We'll be presenting at the International Academy of Emergency Dispatchers UK Navigator Conference in September, sharing the learning and experience we had there. And of course, we know, as we've touched on before, a successful implementation on the first pass of new systems within record time. And then the final paragraph I just want to draw the board's attention to is 100 and 101 on 18 and just over the page on 19, particularly setting out here our quality event that took place on the 2nd of July. And as usual, Chair, to take any questions.
Good. Thanks, Jason. So any questions to Jason? Oh, sorry, Kevin.
It was just not in your paper, Jason, but the media coverage of some pretty harrowing stuff over the last couple of over the last week. I just wondered whether there was any impact for us as an organisation. And I know you've already put messages out explaining to staff and colleagues and wider what is already being done, but perhaps now is a good time to
thanks, Kevin. So I mean, this is coverage on Sky News yesterday of inappropriate behaviour towards female staff in services across the UK. So it's not focused here on us in Wales, but it's across the UK, particularly a couple of services in England. Of course, what we do know already is that we recognise that we have pockets of poor behaviour in our culture across the organisation. That journey for us began a couple of years ago with the independent assessment of culture which was externally delivered for us and has led to a number of actions and interventions since, most notably and perhaps more recently, appointment of our first, speaking of guardian. The focus will add to the culture journey, the pace will add to that with Angie taking on the role, full portfolio of Director of Culture from October, and other interventions which were referenced in my note to staff yesterday. But I think the message perhaps I'd give Kevin, sorry, is that we recognise that there have been experiences for some of our people across the service which have been inappropriate over many years. We're absolutely focused on ensuring that all of our workplaces are safe and inclusive for all of our people. We've made a good start, but we've got more work to do, a lot more work to do. I don't know if Angie, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd probably just add, again, just the other groups that we are reaching out to is the students. Obviously, we know they're on holiday at the moment, but through the universities, using Jason's note, again, making sure we're connecting with them, connecting with the potential students who are starting their paramedicine degrees in the autumn, because we recognise there will be some anxiety for individuals. But yesterday at WAST Live, Lizzie O'Shea, our new guardian, also reiterated the raising concerns, speaking up safely, but it remains a key priority, and at every opportunity we are encouraging colleagues to come forward, but also recognising that there is often this sense of shame and shame for some colleagues who absolutely have not experienced this or don't want to work in an organisation that potentially is associated with that. So we're really trying hard as well to just reiterate as well that this is pockets, across every service. It is not, across everywhere. And I think that's really important as well, but it's valid to raise it.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions? Yes, Stefan.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned the quality event earlier this month in Llandrindod, and the question I was going to ask was, is that the first of several? Will there be others? Because it's really good to see that happening, since the Act came in, because we know there's more work to do to embed the duty of quality across the organisation.
Yeah, so this is the first, and we're expecting to run an annual conference in the way that we did this time. We had really good cross-organisational engagement with it. What's really good and the measure of success is the comments that come from people who were not there,
Right.
and the desire to be present at the next one. So we're
Right.
looking forward to doing it again.
Great, good news.
Good. Any other? I was just going to ask a cyber question. Actually, I know we're going to see the digital item coming up on the agenda a bit later on, but I know in your report, obviously, it's coming through from Johnny. So I'm directed to Johnny that you mentioned we had a couple of our suppliers who've been subject to attacks, and I just wondered whether there was any follow up on the big outage that hit the news to do with the software 365 update that we weren't affected by, I believe. But are there any lessons that we should be learning, or anything more that we should be thinking about in relation to that?
Yeah, thank you. I guess it was a stark reminder of how important our resilience in technology is. This event wasn't a cyber incident as such, it wasn't a cyber attack, but we stood up pretty well, actually, and a lot of that is by design in terms of how we protect ourselves and our technology and our infrastructure. What we will look to do is a bit of a lessons learned in terms of how we handled ourselves, how we put some of our protocols to the test. But to be fair, we stood pretty well in this one. It's probably another reminder in here around supply chain. So as we build a larger digital footprint with other suppliers, we build a bigger risk. So that's something that we'll continue to manage through our procurement rules.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, I think that's the end of looking around. Nobody else. So thanks, Jason. So in that case, we note your report. And there's more in relation to the concept from harm and so on, which will come in a moment anyway, with a specific paper on avoidable harm that we always address. So for the time being, we'll move on, and I think we're going to questions from the public, if there are any, Estelle.
I can confirm, Chair, this morning there aren't any, so
Okay.
I think we may be a victim of the summer holiday season.
We may well. And a reminder to anybody who's watching either now or watching later that this is a board meeting, which is an in-public board meeting. We do welcome questions from the public. We do receive them from time to time. We do welcome them. So if you do have any, please use the mechanisms which are well publicised to put questions to us, and then we will endeavour to answer them at the next board meeting. Okay, in that case, we move on to item 8, which is the staff story. Are you introducing that, Estelle? Or?
I'm just going to start.
Okay, so it's a video, so we'll start the video.
Right, yes.
Yes, Liam,
Sorry.
yes, please.
Patient
Yeah.
story. So we've got a patient story today, and this is a story that is shared by Mr. Maxwell, who lost his wife recently, and it's his experience and his son's experience that they went through. It doesn't matter how educated, how informed, how aware we are of different cases that we come across. Sometimes a case catches you and it makes you think differently and makes you want to observe and reflect differently. And for me, this case is really powerful, not just because of the experience on the day, which was not a good experience, but actually the consequence of the experience. And so what I would request board colleagues consider as we're listening is not just what was happening in the room, because I think regrettably we would all recognise what was happening in the room, but actually to reflect on how we are better able and what we can do to support people with the consequence of delays. I'll comment at the end, but I think for me it's really around the psychological well-being, the support, the multi-generational impact of delays that come through. So thank you, Alex.
I have, when I made the first call, really laid it on thick, told a lot of lies, got her on a red and got them round here straight away. I know that they could have saved her. That is my belief. If she'd have been in the hospital, she would have been saved. That upsets me a lot.
It was just before 2 and I got a call from my dad saying he's called an ambulance for my mother. I come round and I saw for myself my mother was not very well and indeed did need an ambulance. It took several other calls then of repeating the same information, seeing my mother slowly deteriorate over the hours, and it took 6 hours for an ambulance to arrive. They pumped 1.8 litres of basically brown fluid sick from her, which had caused sepsis in the end, which has ultimately led to her death. So this was a time-sensitive matter, that it was a medical emergency that could have been prevented if the ambulance had arrived in time. When I made that final call, I already knew my mother had passed. She was cold, she was not breathing. I told the operator this and conducted CPR, as I say, before the EMTs arrived. They did their very best to save her, but we knew it was futile, and ultimately she was pronounced dead 40 minutes later. Because the death was unexplained, we had to then go through the process of obviously being interviewed by the EMT first responders about the incident. That was followed on then by the police because it was a sudden unexplained death. And then we had the coroner's service turn up, who took away the body. And we were not expecting that outcome. We were not expecting, when we called the ambulance originally at 2, that it would end like that. Even today, we're still in a sense of total disbelief that it all panned out like it did.
They released my wife's body to the undertaker. So I got myself sorted out. I go down and pay my last respects. No, you can't do that, unfortunately, because she'd been chopped up, basically. He said that, you know, we don't recommend at all that people see the bodies. So unlike any other situation I'd been in, you couldn't go in and basically pay your last respects. Not me, not my family, friends, anybody. We couldn't sort of lay her to rest.
I started the complaints process with the Welsh Ambulance Service Trust very early on, because we agreed, because of the 6-hour delay, that this was not acceptable. We needed some answers. Ambulance handover times, along with the pressures of staff being off due to COVID, were I believe, the official reasons. Nobody we spoke to in any time since, in any way, shape or form, has been able to give us a definitive answer of ultimately where does the responsibility lie, what changes have been done that were promised that have actually had an impact, and all this time later we don't think things have improved. We think they've gotten worse. It's not what we want for our, in memory of our mother. We want some sort of, for our own resolution and peace of mind's sake, we need something positive to come out of this so it doesn't happen to anyone else. We've had the apologies and we've had the reasons. We do understand those, we really do. But we're asking, is it acceptable? If this happened to you and your family, could you accept it and move on? And at the moment, we have no resolution to move on.
Life was just there for us, and I'm lost without her. I have to be truthful. You become almost like a joint person, if you were, over that amount of time. Half my life's been ripped away. I know full well that she would not have wanted us to be sitting here weeping and wailing and carrying on, but she would have wanted us to find out what has happened and what justice was. And
yeah, if the situation was reversed, she would be doing exactly the same as everything she could. I agree that's the best way to do it, remember the best about her. But unfortunately, as a result of the day, I can honestly say, hand on heart, that from doing the CPR on my mother, who I knew had died, it is the first and last thought I do have every day. I am dreading the day when eventually another member of my family is in a medical emergency and needs that healthcare, because I genuinely don't know what the outcome is going to be.
Tired of seeing a blurred reality? Try
Streaming worked. So if you were live streaming, you were able to see that. Hopefully people at the back still got the message. You couldn't see it very, very clearly. Any comments or thoughts? Ian, do you want to just kind of reflect on this, and then we'll go around?
It's a very powerful story. And I probably want to say in public thank you to both Mr. Maxwell's for taking the time to share it and taking the time to consider how they shared it. They felt, as you hear at the end, that they want their experience to inform how the NHS at scale, us as a board, look to respond and reduce the risk of delays and harm. And I personally bring it here because I think this story demonstrates the ongoing duty of care that we have to listen to families, listen to experiences, and to ensure that we're doing everything, and I believe we are trying to do everything we can to support them in the moment and afterwards.
Good, thanks, Liam. Well, I think Jogger's hand went up first. So shall we go to Jogger and then come back to you? Is that all right? Yeah. Jogger.
Yeah, do you mind that Jason wants to go first on this?
Go for it.
Just what Liam said, it was a very powerful story, and as a board, I think we've heard a few over the years, and we do welcome them. And for me, it's a case that as an organisation, we follow up with these. And Mr. Maxwell made a comment about he's had a response, but he still doesn't quite feel satisfied. And I think this is where the support from us, the ongoing dialogue, is really important. And it was really interesting to hear that it wasn't just us being there late, it was that he thinks us being there late led to that. And then afterwards, it being an unexplained death. I didn't know that would be the process of an unexplained, which again, it's a real strong message for us as an organisation, that the knock-on effect. And because it is a system-wide issue, I think they acknowledge, I just want to ask, whether is that shared with the health board, not just this story, but general stories where it is down to slight delay, handover delay is potentially root cause. Is that shared with health boards to say, look, we want you to know this is what's happening out there in the front line?
So absolutely. So all of our, in cases such as this, the joint investigation process means that we have very open dialogue, and we work in partnership with the health boards to investigate and to try and give the best response that we can. Where part of helping both Mr. Maxwell's is actually doing this recording. So part of that, it's not the closure process, but certainly part of that healing process is giving them the opportunity to share and to have their voice heard. So bringing it here today, I think, is an important part of that process. I have shared this story. This is actually the third time I've shared it in the last few months. I've shared it at a national meeting which had national representatives and health board representatives from across the country. And we used it as a bit of a call to action in the Duty Equality Conference where, this is what we're about. So I think this process is helpful. I hope it is helpful to having voices heard. And absolutely, we share the patient stories that we take here and the patient stories we take to Quest and People and Culture as appropriate to each of the health boards.
Thanks, Chair.
Go to Jason and then to Beth.
Would just Beth want to
Perhaps
I'll wrap up?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you, Chair. Jog has asked the one question I was going to ask. I would like to echo what you've said, thanking Mr. Maxwell and his son for sharing the story, because I think the way that they did it, despite their loss, was so respectful, and it wasn't done in a pointing the fingers antagonistic way, which I think is very much to their credit. I guess my other question was, at the outset, how did we categorise the call? What category was it attached to? Because obviously I understand there were significant handover pressures. And my next question then would be, did we ask for an immediate release directive with a local health or with a hospital? And how did that part of the system responsibility play out?
So the answer to the question, did we put an IRD, an immediate release directive in? I can't answer that. I'll have to come back to you on that directly. But the call was initially categorised as number 2 and became number 1.
Okay.
And then obviously, as things deteriorated, it went to red.
And we know that's the category that we struggle the most with in terms of the immediate release directives, don't we? And we also know they very often lead to direct harm and significant harm. So there's a theme running through this, isn't there, really? It's a tragic story yet again. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Chair. So I wanted to add my thanks to those which have already been offered to the Maxwells for supporting us with sharing their story, because it is a powerful one, not just in relation to the response delay to Mr. Maxwell Senior's wife, but also to the ongoing psychological impact and harm which the response delay causes for those which are left behind. And I think that's, a powerful perhaps reflection that we don't always look at. It's a lens that we don't always necessarily look at when we think about response delays. We think about the impact and the harm, the avoidable harm to the patient. But there is an impact on those who are around them, and particularly in cases like this, who are left behind. I just think it's another dimension that it's powerful for us to hold on to and convey in our conversations with system partners, that there is a legacy of the delays which are caused by the extreme pressure which we all know about and understand, but there's a legacy left with patients, relatives, family, friends who are present at the time for years and decades to come.
Helen, or is it Estelle?
Estelle and then
Okay.
Yes, sorry, and thank you, Chair. It's just a couple of things. Jason's kind of picked up one of them, which was around public confidence in our service, because Mr. Maxwell Jr., if I can describe Mr. Maxwell as that, was his sense that he wasn't confident in the future that if something similar were to happen again, they wouldn't be in the same position. I think there was a really good challenge to us about, is this good enough for us, for our families, our friends? I think it's really important as well that we acknowledge as a board that, we're sorry that was their experience, deeply sorry that was their experience. And sadly, we know it's not a unique experience. So I think there's something, the public confidence thing to me is really, really important. I think, as Jason said, there's a psychological impact for those who've experienced this kind of event and the mark on them, but also, people talk to their families, their friends about their experience, and that does mean that people lose confidence in the ability of us to respond effectively, recognising, as the Maxwell said, that when the EMTs arrived, they tried the damnedest. And that's often reflected, isn't it, in the concerns that we get. It's very, very rarely about staff. It's generally about the timeliness of that response, not exclusively, but 9 times out of 10. So it's just on that public confidence bit, and also on that challenge to us about, do we feel as a board that this is a service that that we would want for ourselves? And I know we all feel very strongly that we want to do better.
Thank you, Phil.
So I mean, I echo everything that's been said by others, so I won't repeat it. I had one quite specific question, which was, Mr. Maxwell mentioned that he hadn't been allowed to say goodbye to his wife because of the way that or because of the advice that was given after, I assume, a post-mortem. I just wanted to understand, is that standard policy? And if it is, I wonder how that might impact how our paramedics support people to, at the point at which they realise there's going to be an unexplained death investigation, perhaps encourage them to take a few minutes with the person on the scene before they're taken away. It seemed a bit clunky to me, and I thought that we sort of moved past that as a system. I thought we were more aware of the importance of letting people have that moment, and I just wanted to check what the situation was there.
Yeah, do you want to come to that?
I mean, look, Hannah, my understanding of this, this does sound a bit unique. Let me put it like that. Yeah.
Okay,
So my understanding of the situation and circumstances are that if there is an unexplained death where the patient hasn't seen a medical practitioner for a period of time, then there will be a post-mortem. That's standard practice, but it is usual after a post-mortem for access to close relatives to be permitted. So this does feel a bit unusual in those circumstances, but of course it's not a matter for us to answer to. It would be a matter for the coroner's office in this particular case to talk to the Maxwells about the circumstances of this particular incident.
Thanks.
You want to say anything on that, Liam?
No, I think
Experience.
from a clinical practice perspective, the only thing I would say is we would, if you were in the room, if you were dealing with the situation, you would anticipate and expect that the process would allow for somebody to be allowed to say their farewell. So I wouldn't see this as something that would drive a change in clinical practice and what we give.
And yeah, and what Jason's explained, that makes sense. That was what I wanted to understand, because if it was standard practice, then that might have, but it's not, and that's all to the good.
And I can actually tell you that from just one anecdotal personal experience, having spent a shift with the shower recently, which was called to a sudden death. That is exactly what happened. That well, it was deemed an unexplained death for complicated reasons we don't need to go into. And whilst the police were being called, the paramedic did make every effort to, first of all, make the deceased kind of comfortable, as it were, and then to invite the family to go and spend some time with them, which they did. So I think actually the paramedics do probably do what you were suggesting anyway. Actually, certainly from my personal experience, that particular one definitely did. So one assumes it is a fairly general behaviour. Okay, my two takeaways from this, just to wrap this up, really was, and I think I will reflect on it, that the comment that Mr. Maxwell Jr., as you described him, the son was saying that in the morning and at night he is reminded of the moment of trying to do CPR on his then deceased mother. I mean, that's a very harrowing thing, and that because we are in this environment with long waits, that presumably is not a unique scenario, and it's harrowing. And the other one was Estelle's comment that really resonated with me about the fact that they're left dreading the potential next health emergency, and the fact that might also result in a long wait and an unhappy outcome. So we shouldn't have a community which is feeling fearful about the future and about the fact that they can't rely upon an ambulance service. So, but we all understand that, and I think we all reflect the same feelings. We will, of course, be rewriting and we'll be thanking Mr. Maxwell, both Mr. Maxwell, for their time. And out of interest, Liam, making that video, did we instigate that video? Was it something that we suggested they might like to do? Did they volunteer to do it? How did it actually come about?
So all of these videos come about as a result of the work that goes on between the PTR team and the patient involvement team, so the patient engagement and community involvement team, PECI. So there's a conversation that goes on between them. So the PTR team will be working very closely through an investigation with the family as part of the duty of candour. They will identify through that process individuals or families that may want to participate and share their story further. And then they will open a dialogue with the PECI team. The PECI team will go through all the appropriate consent requirements, but importantly, do it in a way that is comfortable for the individuals. And so they'll spend quite a lot of time preparing, and then they'll work in terms of, as you can see here, setting up the video and making sure that they're as comfortable and supported as possible. And we follow that duty of care through post the event as well. So having shared this today in a public forum, Leanne's team will be making contact and ensuring that they feel supported with that as well.
Good, good. And it's also good, I'm sure, having made the video, for them to know that it is getting that airing, because presumably they've made it on the basis they want it aired. So it's going to be very good that they know that is happening, and you've already shared the fact that it's been seen in other groups already, and may well be seen by other groups in the future. Good. So our thanks to them, and we'll follow that up formally with a written thank you. So we move on to our next item, which is linked, because it is the routine paper that we have for to review the progress on actions to avoid harm, to mitigate avoidable harm. And again, for the benefit of anybody watching this live or the recording, we appreciate as a board that the long handover delays and the harm which can be caused in those circumstances is significant, and so much so that we take this as an individual item each month. And so I think, Jason, are you going to lead off on this?
Thank you, Chair. So as ever, this is the paper focused on the actions that we have to mitigate avoidable harm, particularly those which are within our control. The paper, in the way that it's currently framed, has been operating now for some 2 years in this guise. So we'll take the opportunity, Chair, with your consent, to review that after today's board and think about how we can present perhaps a fresh lens on this particular issue, recognising, of course, that this is an issue which is stubborn and has been here for some time and is likely to be here for some time in the future. So we'll take the opportunity to perhaps refresh the look and feel of this after today's meeting. But in terms of where we are, good progress has been made against many of those actions which are within our control. I'll come back to the specifics on that later. Sadly, though, the situation around us is that in the month just closed, so in June, we saw 20% more hours lost to handover in this June compared to last June. So that was just over 22,200 hours lost. Remembering, of course, that our roster production is predicated on no more than 6,000 hours being lost per month. So significantly more than that, and as the data that steps out, a deteriorating position when compared to last year. In the 3 months to the end of June, just shy of 1,700 patients are assessed as being exposed to or could have come to some level of severe harm whilst waiting on an ambulance for longer than an hour outside emergency departments across Wales. Just shy of 29,000 patients didn't receive a response as a result of the need to deploy the clinical safety plan, or those who cancelled their ambulance. And of course, many of those patients would have self-presented at emergency departments and would have been patients that we should have been able to respond to. And in that 3-month period, there were 23 cases of severe avoidable harm, sadly including some relating to deaths where extensive delays occurred. If we go over to the main body of the report, there's just a couple of points, 3 points I just want to pull out from the body of the report. Firstly, of course, one of the actions for us is about ensuring that we have good attendance and reducing our absence rates, particularly relating to sickness. And whilst we've been on an improving trend over the last 2 years or so, there is still more work to do. But in May, we saw one of our best months ever best months in the last 12 months, with total absence just over 7.5%, down from a peak of about 14%, 2 years ago. So there's still a way to go, but there's significant improvement being delivered. The other thing I just want to draw out is that when we get to the MIQPR later, colleagues may notice that there appears to be a deterioration in the consultant close rate, both in percentage terms but also in absolute numbers. This is because of a data issue associated with the contribution from 111. So whilst the presentation of the data looks to indicate a deterioration, we're pretty confident that there are a number of patients or a cohort of patients which should be included in that representation that aren't yet because of a data quality issue associated with the new systems, which is worth pulling that out from this report. Over the page, at the bottom of page 4, I just want to draw the board's attention to the eradication of 4-hour wait. So this is where a patient is in an ambulance outside an emergency department in excess of 4 hours. What you can see there is good progress, notably at Cardiff and the Vale, as we've demonstrated before, but the challenge is continuing to be present at other sites across Wales. And this graph at the bottom of page 4 also sets out the number of cases where patients have waited in excess of 1, 2 or 3 hours as well. And then the final point I just want to draw the board's attention to is the list of actions at paragraph 13, which are those within our control, essentially set out in our IMTP for this year, with the largest kind of bucket of activity here focusing around what we can do to improve, or another way to present it, reduce avoidable harm, particularly as we go into winter. And that will be around adjustments. We'll make further iterations and adjustments we'll make to the clinical model that we currently operate, that was first introduced in 2015. And we'll be bringing through detail of that, Chair, into the board meeting in September. For the board's awareness and endorsement. So I happy to take any questions, and the team will support that as we go through.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much, Jason. So, any questions from anybody?
Thank you, Chair. No question, just a few comments really. Jason, you picked up on some of the things that jumped out at me. I guess what I wanted to say at the start is it's just so difficult reading the same report every meeting. We receive similar reports, month after month without seeing any real improvement. And that actually is stated in those words in the report. The handover hours last in June, over 22,000, and yes, 20% up on last year. But that's really concerning for this time of year as well, because we are used to seeing that being the better part of the year. So I think that just demonstrates how stuck the system is and the lack of improvement and the impact on people. And I refer to the staff, our staff, as well as the patients here. It must be soul destroying for them. Paragraph 12, I was really pleased to read that. So this is framed in the way of mitigating risks for ourselves. So we recognise we can't directly do more than we are in terms of reducing handover delays for patients. However, we are looking at how we can minimise the risks for those patients during the time they're spending with us in the ambulances, many for hours at a time. And I've been through that in the last couple of months myself with one of my parents. And that's really, really good to see that we can, we are genuinely testing ourselves and asking ourselves the questions, what can we do? It's just so difficult to see this repeatedly, isn't it? As I say, no questions, just I felt it was important. I had to make those comments, Chair. So thank you.
Thank you, Beth. And I was going to make similar, but I'll leave that for the moment. Andy.
Rachel was before me.
Rachel.
Yeah. Thanks. It was just not a question. It was just a comment, and I completely agree, Bethan, with what you're saying. And certainly our sense is that our transformation programme is going to be something that else is within our gift that can make a big difference in this regard. But just as the kind of ever the optimist, we've got a session coming up at the new Joint Commissioning Committee development session in August. I can't be there, unfortunately, but Jason and Andy and Liam will be taking the commissioners through. And of course, it's a new set of commissioners with new lay members, a new kind of chief commissioner, who's not been previously involved in the ambulance sector. And it's a really good opportunity in that development session environment to take them through what the issues are and to talk them through our our response and our mitigation, but also, I guess, opportunity to gently challenge the rest of the system in terms of the actions that they're taking. But because it's a development session which previously has not been that common, I think it just provides that safer and kind of more informal environment that hopefully will get those conversations going to a greater extent than perhaps we had before. So that's a positive, I think,
good.
definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. Any?
Bethany, was to go to your point really about item 12 about those actions were
Yeah.
taking place. I personally, just to be open, I've had a real dilemma with this one because a lot of my challenges I feel are we're normalising the abnormal by doing these things, that by taking these actions we're kind of cementing in things that we shouldn't be cementing in. But recognising the flip side to that is also that actually in the meantime, whilst we're doing his best to get out of this situation, that patients are going to come to harm. So, it's been one with myself and Liam have been to and fro, and his predecessor for that matter. I don't know how many times about how we go on this and whatever. So I think we have made some movement in this regard, but for me, it's not without risk that we're essentially building in these into the system that we shouldn't be in.
And I understand that completely. But having said that, I'm really pleased to see me doing something, because it's the only thing we can do. And it's all about the patient risk and the patient experience, isn't it?
Indeed.
So I understand your comments. Yeah.
Thanks. I know Peter wants to come in, but did you want to come in?
It was a very specific point, and it's around SDEX and a sense of total frustration about, if someone's bright idea is meddling in with the system that isn't going to work, why have it? There's no continuity. They're not even open the same amount of time per day, and we still don't have a pathway into them. And that, if we could get 4% into them, would that make a huge impact in what the challenge is against the number of hours lost? It might make a dent, but if it's not working and it's not going to work, then it might work for a health board, but it's not working for the ambulance service. We need to think about other ways, and I appreciate, Andy, there's harm and there's normalizing the stuff that shouldn't be somebody's bright idea to fix a short-term problem. So there's something about continuity for me, in all of it, for the service and for the patients.
Thanks, Joe. Did you want to answer that, James?
Yeah, just on SDEC, Kevin, we continue to raise the challenge of SDEC referability with colleagues across the system. As you say, our modelling suggested that about 4% of our activity could be diverted through SDEX, were those pathways to be available to us on a consistent basis. And as we know, they're not. But I think that the point I would just make kind of tangentially to that is that we are getting some good traction now in dialogue around high volume cohorts of patients. So chest pain, respiratory problems, breathing problems, and falls. A good example, a couple of us were in a workshop with colleagues in Betsy earlier this week, particularly looking at this and what we can do more closely, collaboratively as we head into winter. So whilst the SDEC issue remains a challenge for us, we have got traction on alternative groups which are high in volume for us and emergency colleagues in emergency departments, where we can manage those patients differently.
Thanks, Jason. Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Sickness absence, really would welcome that improved stat. That's something that technically is within our control, and we've heard reference previously, haven't we, about sickness absence. So really welcome that. Without getting into detail too much, I know we're still slightly off our target of 6% by March 24. But in terms of that figure coming down, is that sort of sickness across the board? In other words, has long-term sickness come down as well as sort of short-term sickness? And I guess following on from that, when are we confident that, that despite that improvement, we can get down to our target level of 6%?
So long-term, yes, come down, and some really proactive work about facilitating getting people back to work where appropriate, but also potentially facilitating them leaving the organisation if they're just not going to be fit to work. Peter. Short term still continues to be some of our challenges, but what we're really working, and particularly with Lee and his team, is sort of focusing on areas where there are definitely anomalies and that we need to really understand what's beneath those. But short term is still the area where I think we've really got to put most of our attention. Great question in terms of when are we going to get to 6%? It remains absolutely our commitment and our focus. But there are lots of things that come around that. So we always try and sort of focus on, yeah, we're going to get there, but every month is an absolute bonus and it requires continual work every single month. Every manager absolutely recognizing it. So it's absolutely where we're going to go. I'm not going to give you a commitment about when we're going to definitely get there, but I can give you the commitment that, you know, it is a priority. And I know Lee and his team particularly focused on it every single week, every single month as well. If we can tackle as well as that, I'll say, you know, some of our cultural issues as well, recognizing that we have feedback as well around, you know, stress, mental health and anxiety, that is going to help as well. But this is not something that is a short-term issue, and we know that, but we're on the right trajectory.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Just looking around to see if there's any other comments. I would just actually, I think it's interesting that you were saying, Jason, that June, in terms of handover delays, was worse this year than June last year. May was also worse this year than last year by some considerable margin, I believe. And we don't seem to be seeing that sort of differentiation between summer and winter anyway, but it seems to be the pressures are fairly constant all the way through, aren't they? I think I welcome a refresh of the way we look at that. We've had this paper now repeated for many months, possibly a year or so, so it's probably time to refresh that. But I think it's worth reflecting that we are, as an organisation, doing everything we possibly can internally in terms of providing as much resource as we can and making that resource as efficient and effective as we possibly can in an environment where handover delays, regrettably, are worse now than they were 12 months ago. And it is fundamentally the handover delays, which are so much out of our control, which are causing the issues. Okay, we're asked to note that and to consider the actions that we're taking, which we've duly done. So if everyone's content with this, we'll move on to the next item, which is over to you, Rachel, for MIQPR.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so as usual, I'll just pull out a couple of issues. We know that this report, there's been a couple of tweaks, but largely this report went to Finance and Performance Committee. I wasn't there for that, but Hugh took the committee through that, and there was a good discussion, I believe. So just to pull out a couple of issues, as I normally do. The first one, just to talk about the 111 service. So there are some issues, as Jason alluded to, in relation to data quality, which we're working on. But the kind of key indicator around call abandonment rates, which we'd noted last time as being of slight worry, because as a result of the new system coming in, we did see an improvement in June, and through July that has further improved. So that is really good as the system settles, staff settle, and we know that one of the key factors there is the number of staff we've got in post, and the staff, the teams are now back onto recruiting additional call handlers, and we're expecting the right number of call handlers to be in post by September. So I think we'll continue to see improvements there, which is good. A couple of other things I just wanted to pull out in terms of areas of improvement or difference. You'll see that we've got for the first time a duty of candour metric in here. That was something that the board agreed a year ago, so it's been a while to get that in, and I still think there's a couple of issues to just bottom out in terms of the data there, but it's really important that as a board we are able to report on compliance against that important legislation. And the other, from a quality perspective, the other improvement you'll see is that in some of the quality, the clinical indicators. So this is an area where we've been talking for a while about the fact that we believe the bundle indicators to be not showing the right level of performance, largely as a result of how we're using the new EPCR system, rather than a real problem with the quality of the care that we provide. And Andy's team have got a very comprehensive action plan in place to try and address those things, and we're starting to see that performance improve in line with where we think the quality of our care is. So that's really good to see. The other thing from a quality perspective you'll have noted is complaint response times. absolutely fantastic to see that improvement, because that has been, you know, it's one thing, Beth, isn't it? You were saying we don't see improvements, but that is something that's been stuck for a long time. And to be fair, the resources that we put in, the people leading the team have made a real difference there, and so that's excellent to see. Just to pull out a couple of areas, Jason pulled out the one I was going to pull out in terms of areas of improvement that we still have yet to make around consultant close. Even though the data is not quite right, there's still work, I think, and we'll be doing that through the transformation programme, looking at how we can increase the numbers of cases that we successfully close through remote assessment. And a couple of others just to pull out perhaps where we're focusing our efforts. One was around numbers, our UHP. So the reason I'm pulling this out for our EMS service is that the Commissioner has started to make a number of comments around the levels of staffing that he's expecting to see as a result of the commissioned resources that he provides us with, and we've just started to fall a little bit below where we would want to be, and I know that Lee and his team are now, obviously focused on making sure that we're recruiting up to the right levels of staff so that we can provide that assurance to commissioners. And in a similar manner, you know that in our IMTP we focused last year and this year on improving the work experience of our staff, and one of those indicators is overruns. Again, that appears to have flattened in terms of improvements made, and again I think Lee was going to just come in and just give some assurance really around the work that his team are continuing to do, not least today as well, in trying to find a way through that very knotty issue for our staff. The last thing I was just going to pull out, Chair, is that you'll see in the paper that a good discussion was had at our Finance Performance Committee on the review of metrics, which we go through each year. So the execs had a look at it, Finance Performance Committee had a look at it, and in large part, people were comfortable with the number of metrics that we have at the moment at this board level. With one exception, there was a sense that including a metric on falls in particular, how long people who have fallen lie before they're picked up, which from a clinical, it isn't an outcome measure in itself, but it's very much a proxy for good clinical outcomes if we can get people off the floor quickly. So we're going to work up a metric around that, and I think to the point that you've made before, Chair, we know that this set of metrics we've got range from strategic to operational, and my team are in preparation for board in September, trying to pull through that higher level of a visualization of the metrics that really show us how we're making progress on our strategy. So that will be coming in due course. But apologies, I didn't put this in the paper, but we do need to approve the new metric, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, any questions to Rachel? Joker, looks like you're.
No, I was just going to say thank you, Chair. Just following on from what Rachel said up the Finance Performance Committee, the paper was looked into quite a bit of detail, and with regards to the change in the metrics that was discussed and assurance received and approved by the committee, and also just assurance for colleagues around the table here and anyone watching that. As the finance performance, we meet every other month, and these papers are looked into in great detail, and scrutiny given, and the exec, put the question on that. So just for assurance there.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments? We're asked to note the report. We're also asked to formally approve that change in the metrics. Can I just check we're all content to approve that as recommended by P? Good. Okay, so that's formally done. I don't think there are any other questions around, so thanks, Rachel. Comprehensive as ever. On my agenda, we've got a note potentially having a break now, but we're running ahead of time, so I suggest we carry on for a bit longer before we take that break. So shall we move on to item 11, Trish, which is you on risk management and board assurance?
Thanks, Chair. So because of the meeting cycle, so we review the BAF every quarter, and this board meets bi-monthly. So this is the one meeting where the cycle doesn't meet the meeting. So the full BAF isn't in the paper, and with the assistance and support of the chair and the chair of Audit, Risk and Assurance Committee, we've agreed not to give you the same BAF report as you had in May, but we've included 223 and 224 because we have the avoidable harm paper as well, and I think it's important that we have that fuller picture. But it hasn't changed since you saw it in May, but I can give you assurance that those two risks do continue to be updated and reviewed, and actually quite a few of those actions have moved into controls as well. So there is movement on that. There is also reviews of all of the principal risks throughout May, June and July, and they're making their way through the usual governance process. So, and of course, the committees review their risks at each meeting as well. And on that, the Finance Performance Committee, we did a deep dive on the cyber risk in the closed session last week on risk 260. So had a good look at the cyber improvement plan and the actions and recommendations from a number of audits, including the Network and Information Systems Directive and audit and internal audits, as well as third-party reports. So we gave that a good review then, but just really not much movement for you to see formally, but in the background there is still that movement through the process, Chair.
Good. Okay, thanks. So we understand where we are in the cycle and appreciate that. So any questions to Trish on issues around the risk assurance? We were asked to note that we received the assurance that the risks are being reviewed in line with the agreed schedules, and I think we received that assurance. So that is done. Everybody's content looking around? We seem to be. Good. Okay. So in that case, we'll move on to item 12, which is financial performance. Chris, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper builds on a detailed presentation that was given to F&P last week, essentially sort of right after that presentation due to meeting timings. The discussion at F&P had to be led by a slide deck, of which this is now the paper to follow. Financial performance to month 3, so quarter 1. So obviously last time I think board only received the month 1 position, so things are clearly starting to settle down, if you like, in the context of the financial year. So we're starting to get a better view of what the financial position is panning out. Pleased obviously to say that we're continuing to see the good performance that we've seen of over recent years, continuing from a revenue perspective to balance month on month, and continue to forecast a year-end balance position. There is a small number of variances emerging, as there will be. Nothing ever lands exactly to a set budget. There's both ways, I guess. As I say, small numbers and small values currently, but the team will, we will continue to monitor that closely every month going forward in the usual way. There's a small, probably got a bit more to do on this, but based on some further previous comments and reviews, there's a small enhancement to some of the savings reporting coming through this time, which I think we can do some more on that even, as I say, going forward. But putting up some of the sort of recovered, non-recovered delivery and forecasts, and the way in which we describe some of that, I think was welcomed by the committee. But as I say, I think we've got a bit more we can probably do on that. What I've said to the teams, I want to bring back through next time. That was a bit early, studying at the end of Q1, but mindful of timings of when we will be by the next board meeting, is probably a little bit more. So there's an update on the capital programme in here, but a bit more of a detailed update, particularly on our discretionary capital programme, because by then we would have been in sort of 4 or 5 months into the year and have a greater feel of some of the schemes that are progressing, some of which Jason referred to at the start of the meeting in terms of some of the state's enhancements. But there will be some, as there always is with a capital programme, there'll be some variations we go through the year, there'll be some changes in profile. I know now we're one scheme which is probably slipping a bit more than we would expect it to for items out of our control, but we've got plans to accelerate something else, or a scheme that was going to straddle this year and next year. We can accelerate more into this year, for example. So I'll bring a bit more of a detailed update, probably through F&P, but we'll update the board on that next time as well. Only a thing to note, we'll come back to it later in the session, but we do recognise within this paper as well the emerging of one financial risk in year that we are aware of now, which could be more of a significant value. But as I say, we'll pick that up a little bit later, particularly around the handling plan and any mitigations we have in year to try and manage some impact of that. But like I say, we'll discuss that in a bit more detail later today, Chair. So that's all I was going to highlight from the paper itself. Take the rest of it as read. Happy to take questions as ever, and board is asked in the usual way to note it, plus formally from a government perspective, all the monetary returns that we submitted will be to them as well.
Good. Thank you, Chris, very much. Questions from Peter. Before I do, should I just ask Jogger whether you wanted to make any comments, because this has been through your committee very recently?
Again, just at the finance performance, we had a good airing of the figures, and good to see. Welcome to Chris and his team on the quarter one. We're on track. And again, assurance for colleagues and those watching. We meet every other month, and we do get a good full update on the finances, which is really important, just to make sure we stay on top of those during the course of the year.
Good, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to follow on because we did give it due scrutiny, and I think it's testament to the very good financial management that board has seen in terms of the year end, as you saw the other week, but this is clearly continuing into the new year. One item that we did discuss, and Chris and I have discussed it as well, is the implications of, we talked about capital, but specifically fleet. And you'll see in Jason's report earlier, we put in for something like 24 million November 23, we got about half of that. So there is an implication clearly in terms of us not being able to replace our vehicles in accordance with our strict replacement schedule. So what I sort of asked Chris, or to give assurance really, that will have a knock-on effect. The implications of keeping vehicles longer means they cost us more, maintenance costs go up. So there were two issues here. One, should we accelerate that in terms of the risk register to specifically pick out the implications of funding for fleet? And secondly, the assurance that those revenue implications of keeping vehicles longer are included in the current year. And I must admit, I got positive responses on both. I think, Chris, it's fair to say that risk will be worked up now over the coming months. And you did give assurance that the revenue implications of retaining vehicles longer, certainly for 24/5, are included in the current year's budget.
Yeah, it is, as you say. Yeah, so on the risk, yes, we will. And we'll probably take the opportunity to actually consider wider, not just the money, but maybe some other technological and other, environmental and everything issues within that, and have a bit more of a focus risk on fleet, which was really helpful to prompt that. Thanks. And yeah, the fleet maintenance is one of those variances, I guess, I referenced to briefly. They've started to, even though we put more money into the budget as part of our budget setting and financial plan for this year for fleet maintenance, we're still, I think that's still going to overspend in year, mainly because of the reasons you highlight, that the biggest single impact in the shorter term eventually could become other impacts, obviously, if we have continuing lack of funding or reduced funding for our fleet. But the biggest single impact in the shorter term is a financial one, because we still have the vehicles that we had, they're just getting older and they break down more and they need more servicing and need more maintenance and everything. So it's a revenue cost one. So yeah, we are seeing that. It is able to be managed currently based on what we're projecting forward within the overall bottom line. So again, in that forecast position, must be part of those up and down variances that I briefly referred to. But no doubt, expect to see another cost pressure into next year's financial plan and budget for this as well. Probably similar, if not more, than the magnitude of the value we had to put into the budget for this year.
Good, thanks very much. It's worth reflecting perhaps on fleet maintenance as one of the unsung heroes behind our operational capability. And I know that I've been, and I know that some of my net colleagues have been also to see the new maintenance facility at Merthyr, which is absolutely amazing. Fantastic facility. Clean as an operating theatre. Amazing to see all the ambulances going up and down on this and being maintained and kept in good condition. So you can reflect on the good work that they do to support the service. Any other questions to Chris or to Jago? Doesn't look like it. I mean, we reflect once again. It's a very good news story that at month 3 we are sort of on track for the balanced financial position, which is no mean task, and we understand there's movement within that. But overall, the headline is excellent, and we note also the capital programme that you've mentioned, and we've seen the month 2 and month 3 Welsh Government monitoring reports, so they were included in the paper. So, if everyone's content, we've dealt with that item, and we will move on back to you, Rachel. I think for the integrated medium-term plan.
Yes, thank you. And I'm not going to say much on this, Chair. You'll be pleased to know that this again was discussed in detail at the Finance Performance Committee. The one thing I just wanted to say, I think really, you'll note in here that there's been a significant amount of work to review and revise all of our assurance mechanisms, including the transformation program structures. And I just wanted to say, as the SRO for the kind of major transformation program, I just wanted to say a big thank you to my team, to particularly to Alex, to Heather, and to James, who've done a huge amount of work and have talked, and communicated with people across the organisation to put in place structures that I think are going to be quite effective in managing and driving forward that change, both the transformation side, but also the more, the rest of the IMTP. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to my team for putting the work in and developing those structures. But happy to take any questions on any of the points of detail within the report.
Good, thanks, Rachel.
Just again, with the F&P had a good discussion, and well done to Rachel and the team for the report. And the committee took assurance from the details and the revised structure. So just want to echo that. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one point, Chair,
Yes.
if I can. The point about independent prescribing is well made. It's a capacity issue, and nothing more. The independent prescribing now is a multi-professional activity. It's not simply a couple of specialisms. So the capacity to educate, train, and evaluate expertise, and then the supervision post the initial training is quite a task. So it's no surprise that it's red, but there's a direction of travel, as there is with many other organizations, simply because of the capacity issue. And we were assured around the plan when at F&P.
Good. Okay, thank you. Yes, Trish.
I just wanted to echo, Chair, what Rachel said, and I think for her team, they've pulled together a governance structure that was quite complex and made it quite simple and streamlined, and have integrated with structures that we already have. And I think that is the direction we're going in. So we're not duplicating, and we're using those structures. So yeah, just want to echo that.
Yes, thank you. Just to reflect, I think it was in Jason's paper, there was a comment, or somewhere anywhere, there was a comment about pressure amongst your staff in terms of preparing the next iteration of the IMTP. Has that been,
Yes,
is that a continuing problem? Should we be alert to that?
I think it's just a reflection in my team. You're right. Thank you for picking that up. We're a team that's 5 years ago started as 10. There's 20 of us now, and so we're still bedding in kind of what that looks like. There's actually a lot of it. If you think we've got strategy, planning, performance, and transformation, well, those are so linked. So we're doing a lot of work to make sure that as a team we're not duplicating each other's work, we're complementing each other's work. So I think it's more in that regard that we've been doing some work internally as a directorate. But it is a lot of work, and we will be starting our the planning in earnest in September for next year's iteration. It comes around extremely quickly.
Does it, sir?
But a lot of that will be people, colleagues around the table and their teams as well who have to do a lot of that. But thank you for picking that up. Yeah.
Fine. And the other question I was going to ask you about that was the ministerial priorities that you talked about this in the paper, that
Yes.
not only are we doing our own IMTP, but we're overlaying on that the ministerial priorities, which obviously do link.
Yes.
But they're more than link, they dovetail. I just wonder again whether has that created more workload? Has that added the complications of the work that you're doing, and also for next year's IMTP?
I think it's interesting because the cabinet secretary always intended these to be helpful. She wants to see, and it'll be very interesting to see who the next cabinet secretary is for health. But actually, it does add some level of duplication, because our plan necessarily includes many other things. So it does seem sometimes a bit of a duplication of effort, and other organisations also feel that. But having said that, it is important that Welsh Government ministers are able to see a consistency of approach across all of the organisations, and this is the way the Cabinet Secretary does it. She has been reading each of the IMTPs, we're told, individually and separately. She puts a lot of emphasis on the planning framework, and is really committed to kind of improving it. And funnily enough, Jason just circulated an email through to us earlier today, Welsh Government are reviewing the whole of the planning framework for Wales. It came into place 10 years ago in the kind of guise that it currently is, with the requirement for IMTPs. So they've appointed somebody who used to work for the NHS in Wales and retired a few years ago to come in and undertake a quite in-depth review of that structure. And I'm sure that will be part of it. How do we make sure all of these things dovetail together and we don't duplicate, create work unnecessarily? So it'll be helpful.
Any final questions to Rach? Okay, that's just what we do. We're running well ahead of time, but we've made a substantial movement through the agenda. So why don't we take a short break now? It's 1:45, so maybe we can get a coffee and get back at 5 to take 10 minutes and have a coffee break, and then we'll move through the final parts of the agenda. So back at 5:02 if we can.
You just get ready.
Break and freeze.
we will move on. And are we broadcasting live again? Good. Okay, so we're live again. So remember to everybody that we're broadcasting, sensitive to your microphones and so on as usual. Item 14, Johnny, digital.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So really proud and excited actually to present our digital plan for 24-29. So I'm seeking approval from board today for implementation. Just a few things I want to draw out of the plan. I'm conscious there's quite a lot of content there. I guess the first point is to know this plan has been designed with our patients, colleagues and partners in mind. So it's a plan that encapsulates everything for everyone. More importantly, the plan has been produced by our people, for our people, and for the people of Wales that we serve. There's a vision statement that you'll see there in paragraph 10. I won't read it out word for word, but really proud to represent that vision statement and something that we can stand by. In terms of logistics, so the concept of the plan came through our exec team, Finance Performance Committee in May. This is the externally facing document which came through in July and FPC on the 16th of July. Board will note there's a EQIA in there, so this is the overarching EQIA for the digital plan. Now what we might do is delve into individual programs where we'll refresh particular assessments depending on the nature of the program and project, but that for note is the overarching EQIA at this point. So the plan is due to be published September 2024, and you'll see there's a comprehensive comms plan that's going to go with that. I was really keen not to throw this plan at the organisation, but actually this needs to be embedded, it needs to be nurtured. There's a journey that will go on. So you'll see some details of that through section 15 and the SBAR. One thing that we haven't got in the plan just yet, we're just in final design stages, is our rich picture. So this is very similar to the people and culture plan that you'll have already seen, and that will supplement this ready for launch. 14.1 is the framing of the plan, so you'll get a little bit of a sense of this. So we talk through who we are, why we're changing, the vision, and then the pillars. There are 5 pillars in total, and you'll see those in Appendix 2. So it's in item 14.2 if you're seeing that. So the 5 pillars that we've stemmed this plan on are the everyday essentials. So this is the everyday headaches that we get, the everyday today business. We cannot lose sight of getting the basics right. Security, safety, and cyber. I think I've talked more about cyber in the last 4 or 5 years in my role than I have ever before. Really important, and we need to keep that at the forefront of the plan. Digital pioneers. We're not here to stand still and just run an IT operation. We're actually here to advance and make ourselves better. So that encapsulates all the trailblazing that we want to do in digital. Transformation, so this is the support into the wider programs of work. So we've heard about the clinical model earlier on. We hear about lots of different programs of work. Digital underpins a lot of that in terms of the day-to-day. So again, that's our ability to move with broader transformation. And lastly, data, information and insight. This isn't just throwing more information at the organisation. This is making us smarter, cleaner in terms of how we digest information. So the last thing that you'll see on page 27, this will be an evolutionary plan. So we've outlined what we want to deliver in year 1. It will be an agile plan by nature. So there's about 80 different programs of work that we could have put into this. Of course, we haven't got a team of millions at this point. So what we've outlined is what we want to achieve this year. And there's a range in there from robotic process automation to simplified sign-on, some of the key things that support broader plans. And I guess they're the key points I want to draw out at this point, Chair. So I'm looking for approval today for us to implement the plan.
Good. Thanks, Tony. So questions, comments. Joe, do you want to say anything first?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to mention that we've had a good airing of this in the May and July FBC meeting, and we've had discussions in between Johnny and I know others have as well. So it's really exciting. It's great to see that as an organisation in this space, we're being very proactive. I'm out to Johnny and his team, and well, we've all heard the news, the IT outage, and how reliant we are. So it's good to stay, we're on top of this. And as you mentioned in one of your papers, we can't really afford to just sit still and let it all ride past. So it's been discussed in detail. It's been supported by Kerry, our digital lead as well, on the board, and it's been endorsed by the committee. And thank you very much.
Good, thank you very much. And we also must also make note of the quality impact assessment in relation to this as well. I don't know whether you wanted to say anything about that. I know Kerry had some mention of that. She's not here today to comment. Yeah.
Not on that.
Oh, not on that,
Not
okay,
no, I'll come back to that. Kenny.
There's been done and set out in there, so yeah, comfortable. We've had a good discussion on it.
All right. So open for questions, and Chris first.
Yeah, just to add to provide assurance to the board as well, just in terms of the cost of this. So just to add, it has been through our mechanisms as Johnny outlines, and you'll see in there in the covering SBAR as well. There were some options around the ability to do things and more about the pace at which we could do things and the timing of it and the cost impacts of that. So as board will recall, when we did the budget setting for this year, we did identify digital as one area of investment that we had an ability to put a little bit of resource into within that overarching and overall financial plan. So just to confirm that, the strategy has been built anchored around that. So at the very least, that means that elements that are considered to be delivered this year and the full year financial impact of them into next year we're committed to. Clearly then anything beyond that would be subject to the usual kind of prioritization and financial availability and resources and future years financial planning and budget setting, but just to provide that, because I think that did come up in the F&P discussion briefly as well in terms of providing that assurance to board before approval as well.
Good, thank you. So Hannah wants to come in. So Hannah?
Yes, so I just wanted to say that really welcome this. I think it looks really exciting and really well thought through as well in relation to our other priorities and how that's embedded. I think that's incredibly important. Just wanted to flag up, I suppose, the huge potential of the data, information and insight to dovetail with the research and innovation work that's going on. I know we're very interested in sort of how we can use the data that we have got in new ways. And I think we certainly see that as a particular strength of the Welsh system, actually, that we do theoretically have access to data for a kind of province as a whole. And so there is real potential for that in terms of research studies. So I think just I know, you obviously are a valued member of Academic Partnerships Committee, but just to say that welcome kind of continued engagement around the research side of things particularly. But yeah, this looks exciting and I'm really looking forward to seeing it come to fruition.
Good, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, thanks, Joe. I just want to echo that. I think it's a really good strategy, and I think essential we maximise the use of technology to help in all that we do. I'll just pick one little example that's close to my heart, is the use of drone technology in the future. I mean, that could be massively effective for us. So I'm really excited by that balance of forward-looking and maintaining the current picture. But I think we really need to look at technology as a major plank in terms of our mission and achieving what we need to do. So thanks to Johnny and the team.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, Andrew.
Thanks. I mean, obviously this has been through so many, iterations and socialization, but it's really powerful to see the alignment with the people and culture plan. I do think the rich picture will really help as well, particularly for our staff, where we've really given that commitment about digital literacy, giving them the basics, making sure that we support them. So, really endorse it, and I think it will make a big difference to our staff.
Great. Thanks so much. It does seem to me the digital agenda is so incredibly important if we are on a journey to fundamentally reduce conveyance. That means improving upskilling clinical capability, which means access to patient records and harnessing digital. Your reach about drones is really important. I just wonder whether you want to say anything about artificial intelligence, which is, we've spoken about cyber, but the two things which I suppose are on lay people like myself's mind, or more and more, is the threat of digital, and also the threat for potential benefit from artificial intelligence. And there wasn't much said. I didn't pick up in that. And you really want to say anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got artificial intelligence lined up for year 2 of this plan. So that will start with us agreeing what our ambition is for artificial intelligence. It's a really broad topic, lots of different variations and levels of it. I think AI gets branded about too much in the wrong way, potentially. So there's probably an education piece that we as an organisation need to go on to understand differences between automation, machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we'll start later this year by setting the ambition, and then there are 101 different ideas that we've got. So we'll need to work through some prioritisation of those. And the reason that we've got the security part in there, as we create more artificial intelligence, we create more routes for cyber attacks. So there is a balance between AI and security. So we need to make sure we've got that contrast right.
That's an interesting link I hadn't thought of. Okay, we're asked to approve the strategy. I just looking around, we're all content to do that. A lot of work gone on it, and of course it's gone through the committees as well. So thank you very much, Johnny, and all your team for doing that. And we do then formally approve that. Go forth, launch it. And, we look forward to the developments. Any final questions to Johnny? We're all content with that. Looking around, I think everybody's good. Right, excellent. Let's move on then to item 15. Trish, back to you, governance report.
Thanks, Chair. So there's been one Chair's action since the last meeting on the Microsoft Enterprise Agreement, but we won't ratify that here. We'll ratify it in closed, given the sensitive commercial nature of that. Two decisions made in private session, one related to the SLA for the Grange University Hospital Transfer Service, and the other for the new Dogethly ambulance station business case. And there's some more details on that in the Chief Exec's report. So just for noting, Chair.
Okay, fine, straightforward paper. Just to note those actions. Any questions? Any comments on that? All content? Good. So we note that. Thanks very much. Staying with you then, Trish, for item 16, scheme of reservation delegated powers, slight amendments. We'll ask to approve it.
Thanks, Chair. So this is for approval. So there was some amendments on the scheme of reservation and delegation just following a recent internal audit, really to clarify a few areas, particularly around awards by the board and the logistics that flow from those changes. There are a few other material changes in the Table A and Table B, which is the delegations from the Chief Executive to directors. So we made some clarifying changes to delegated authorities for tenders and quotations and for awards following that tender and quotation exercise, just so it was really clear who was doing what. We clarified some things around the single tender waiver approvals, and also to note that the delegations to the Director of People and Culture in this will become to the Director of People once that individual is in post. So they were the main changes. It went through Audit Risk and Assurance Committee twice, actually, because we went back and made some more changes. So that was finally endorsed on the 10th of July. And we will keep in the first section, which is those reserved to the board, we can't change, and that's changed by Welsh Government. But Table A and Table B, as things move in the year, we will keep that under review as well and bring back any changes that are needed.
Okay, Peter,
happy to endorse all that.
Endorse that, no, fine. So we are asked to approve, it's a formal approval, approve the amendments to the scheme. All content to do that? Okay, good, thank you very much. In that case, we are moving on to board and committee reports. And Peter, it's over to you if there's anything you wanted to tell us about Audit and Risk Committee assurance.
Thank you, Chair. Not really. A lot of the last meeting was to do with the annual accounts, which were exemplary really in terms of the presentation, the year-end results, and indeed the duty of quality annual report, which all came to board earlier on this month. And I assume, Chris, now have all been successfully delivered to wherever they needed to go.
Auditor General Wales signed them off that day, actually, that afternoon.
Good. Apart from that, Chair,
okay,
nothing else.
All right, okay. Any questions to Peter? Okay, thanks so much. Finance and performance, Drogo, anything you wanted to feed back in terms of committee?
Thank you, Chair. The points I had, we've covered most of them. So the main one was the approval for the digital refresh plan, and then the regular updates with the IMTV and the finances. So not all that's been covered, but just from a personal perspective, I just want to say it was my last meeting as the chair, and I just wanted to thank everyone that attend the committee, all the execs that present, and everyone's a lot of great and hard work that goes into that, and it's all welcome. So thank you for making such an easy meeting to chair. Really, it's been really enjoyable doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Drogo. Thank you. Any questions, Drogo? All content? And then finally on this topic, then academic partnership. Anything, Hallie, you wanted to bring to our attention?
So just you'll note that you haven't had a AAA for this just because of the timing of the committee. There were only a couple of things I wanted to draw your attention to. Obviously, we've had a new campaign for appointing the academic NED. That campaign closed on the 15th of July, so that process will happen now over the next few weeks. Through my work as research champion, so I meet with research champions from other health boards a few times a year, and they made us aware of a funding opportunity that's going to be coming to Wales, which is the voluntary scheme for branded medicines pricing, access and growth, the UK government has approved a £400 million investment over 5 years to drive forward UK innovation, sustainability and growth. And they've now confirmed that £22.1 million of that will be allocated to Wales, which is a pretty good allocation given our population numbers. It's going to be focused particularly on the NHS's capacity to deliver commercial clinical research. So essentially putting some investment up front into some of that work. It's going to be focused, sort of weighted towards the first half of that period. So we'll see quite a lot of that funding coming through in the next year or two. And the idea being that that can be used as essentially to sort of kickstart some work that can then lead to other commercial opportunities. Now, it's not entirely clear yet exactly how that will be allocated, but I think it's something worth us having an eye on, because certainly there are real elements of our work and there is real potential for us to take advantage of some of that funding and to use that to make a real difference, I think. So I just wanted to let you know that that's on the horizon. And then the main thing that we discussed in the meeting was thinking about university trust status. So of course we're very pleased to now have it, and the question is, what do we do with it? How do we really make sure that we're getting the most out of that? So we had a very helpful discussion around the benefits that we anticipate coming from that. And I think we're very mindful that in order to realise those benefits, we're going to need to be really focused and really think about how we prioritise those and how we hold ourselves, of course, accountable to making sure that we really get the most out of that. So it was to start with a broad discussion, but we'll be sort of tidying that up and hopefully bringing that at some point to a board development session to make sure that we can use that as a launch pad for other things that we'd like to do. So I think that's all I wanted to say, and just thanks to everyone for their contributions and engagement.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Any questions, Hannah? Okay, so we're moving through then to the consent items. We've got various board and committee minutes there, academic partnership, audit and risk finance and performance, which are there for information, and also the joint commissioning committee briefing for information. I'm just pausing to see if anybody had anything they want to add to that. Normally, but that's fine, good. So then we come to the closing items. Any reflections on today? It's been a short meeting today, which is in part due to our process in the sort of the seasonality of the year, which is helpful. Any reflections or any actions anybody wishes to add or contribute to discussions? All content with today's meeting? Excellent. I don't need to summarise it. I think it's all very straightforward. In that case, I don't have any other business unless anybody else does. Very good. The date of the next meeting is the 26th of September, so we'll meet here formally then. So what I now need to do is to pass the resolution, or request we pass the resolution for the exclusion of the press and members of the public, so that we can reconvene in closed session in due course. So we will do that if all is content. And it's now 11:15. I suggest we take 45 minutes. And if we meet at 12 o'clock, and we can have our closed board, if that suits everybody, early lunch, closed board at 12. Okay, thank you very much. Good. Yeah.